all, and this is a English translation of a very interesting Hindi story given done by Big Brain Co and Raz. He was reborn to take his own revenge. So let's hear about a short translation about this story. It is 1983. One night in 1983, a businessman from Agra named Suresh, his name is Suresh Verma. And what happened was at night he was coming back home when unfortunately a very terrible thing happened, a great tragedy. So his name is Suresh Verma, like I was saying. He was returning home from his car. He was returning home maybe from his work or something. He stopped his car outside his big bungalow and then honked his horn. But after honking his horn, what happened was, after he honked his horn, the next thing was that he had put the horn three, four times. He honked it three, four times. Nobody came out of the bungalow. So finally, what he did was he got out of the car and he started walking towards the bungalow. Suddenly, two people came running towards him with guns. They had guns in their hand, both these two people. And then they approached him. And before Suresh could understand what exactly happened, he could not understand or do anything. One bullet went straight to Suresh's chest. So we see here what happened was it hit his head, in fact, not his chest. It hit his head. He died at the same spot. Further after this, what happened was nobody knew who attacked Suresh Verma. So his family accepted the incident with great sorrow, of course. They had lost their son, and then it was very difficult for them to accept the fact. 5 years after that incident, nearly 5 years after that incident, something happened that refreshed that same memory of that night and their old wounds. So what was that? He happened to meet a 4-year-old boy who was also calling himself Suresh Verma. This 4-year-old boy who was calling himself Suresh Verma. So it is a kind of reborn story, rebirth story. He met this 4-year-old boy who was calling him Suresh Verma, the same name of the person who was murdered that night. On 10th December 1983, a child was born in a poor family in Uttar Pradesh. His name was Toran Singh. Toran Singh was his name. Everyone used to call him Tittu. So his family lived in a small village which is called Bad. So this is a small village called Bad. It is about 13 kilometers from Agra. He was among the six siblings. The youngest Titu was everyone's. The youngest Titu was everyone's favorite. So let's see what happened after that. As he turned 2 years old, when the child turned 2 years old, he started talking strange things. So he began saying, "This is not my house." The small boy called Titu started saying strange things, which was, this is not my house. And then he started telling his parents, "You are not my parents. My name is not Titu, but it is in fact Suresh." A 2-year old was reborn in a strange case. He tells his parents, saying that you are not my parents, my name is not Tittu, it is in fact Suresh. So I have a wife, I have a child, and I have kids. So we see that now, after hearing this from Tittu, his family was very worried, of course. In fact, Titu even made fun, in fact, of the fact that his parents were poor, their poverty, and all of that. So, to his family, who wore torn clothes because of poverty, Titu would say that he has a lot of money, a big house, a big car. The question was, why was a two-year-old boy called Titu, staying way far away from the place where Suresh Varma was murdered one night? Why was this 2-year-old boy saying, uh, behaving like Suresh Varma? It was a strange case of a rebirth. He was reborn to take his own revenge. So we see as the story unfolds, he talks, the small 2-year-old was saying that he has a lot of money, a big house, a big car. But the question is, as I said again, why was Titu talking like that? A small boy of 2 years old, why was he talking such strange things? What is the secret behind his behavior? So at first, his parents thought that Titu was perhaps making up stories, like children would make up stories. So probably Titu was doing the same thing. But as he grew up, as the child grew up, his behavior grew more and more strange, and he began getting it even more weirder. So, at the age of 4, what happened was Titu would insist on going to Agra from where he was at that present place, and then he told his father that he wanted to go to Agra. Of course, he refused to do so. And then one day, what happened was, without telling Tutu, his father went to Agra for some work. And then, when Titu found out about that, he was pretty angry about it. He was quite mad about it. So, we see that as the story proceeds, this young child, Titu, is just a 4-year old, started shouting, screaming, crying. So, when his elder brother Ashok tried to calm him down and try to ask why he was so upset about it. The 4-year-old boy tried to talk to him and tell him. He said that he has a big house in Agra. A small 4-year-old boy living way far away from Agra, in the midst of poverty, complete poverty. He begins to say that he has a big house in Agra and he wants to go there. He insisted on his parents taking him there. So the mystery deepens and more mysteriously the parents are confused. The elder brother is confused. They don't know what to do. Why the small 4-year-old child is insisting on going to Agra? So this where he says he has a big house over there. He is married. He has 2 children. So what was the story about? So as we see, the story proceeds. He goes to meet the family. He wants to meet a family there, he says, and his brother is, of course, shocked to hear this. So he's very shocked. Then, on his brother's request, they all decide to go and meet this family. When they go there, as they go to meet the family that this young child was talking about, who insisted he had another family in Agra, they decided to heed his words, and Ashok decided to go to Agra. This is his elder brother Ashok. So he says, on the insistence of his younger brother, he says, I will go to Agra. And then that's when he began to know some really strange things that began to shock him. When he reached Agra, he found on the busy mall road of Agra, Ashok, this elder brother, sees a radio shop. So on this shop, it was written in big letters, Suresh Radio. So this is in Agra. This boy has traveled all the way to Agra. The small child, his elder brother, they've gone to Agra, and he insisted that that was where he had a big house and all of that. So there in big letters, his elder brother Ashok, he goes there and he sees this big shop called Suresh Radio. And that was the same place. It's exactly the same place where which was mentioned by his younger brother, which is Titu in the present life. So goes inside this house, he goes inside the shop, and he sees that Ashok, there is indeed a radio shop there. It is indeed something uh, uh, connected to what his brother was talking about. It was the same place. It was the same place what had been mentioned by Titu, and he had never been here before in all his life. So suddenly he has said that there is a place in Agra where which belongs to me, and I need to go there. It was the same name also of the shop mentioned by his younger brother. So he goes inside the shop, he went inside the shop. It is the same name also, exactly the same name what the boy had said, Suresh Radio. He sees that there is a widow over there. This widow is running the shop, and he went inside the shop. He finds that this elder brother Ashok finds that there's a widow who's running the shop. After talking to this woman for a while, she says she says that Ashok comes to know that this lady's name is Uma Verma, and she is in fact the widow of the shop owner. So she is running this shop for her husband who is no more. Her name is Uma Verma. And then what happens is the story comes out that the Suresh Verma, who had run the shop initially, he had died about 5 years ago. And the strange thing is that it was not a usual way of death. He was murdered, in fact, by two unknown people who had shot him to death in his head. So what happens is Ashok tells Uma about his his younger brother's strange behavior. He's just a 4-year-old at that time, so he begins to tell Uma about the whole thing, how his brother's behaving strangely and all that. And Uma also becomes very restless. She also gets upset and she becomes very restless. And then what happens? The whole story comes out that both of them start having a lot of questions in their mind. So where is Titu, the real Suresh? Is he actually come back now after after like a rebirth story? Is he actually the real Suresh? How did he know about this house here in Agra, which he is a place that 4-year-old child has never been to? So how is it that he knew about it? How did he know there was a shop there called Suresh Radio, run by this person called Suresh Radio, who was murdered that night on 10th of December? So how is all that? How did a small 4-year-old know all of that? So these are the questions in Uma's mind also, in his mind also. And then what happens is, did he come back after a rebirth? Was it a rebirth? The next day, Uma insists that she wants to go to Titu's village. So she decides to go there. She wants to meet him. She insists that there's something happening and he could indeed be her husband who is no more. So she is Suresh's widow. So then they decide to go there. And then what happens is, as soon as Titu sees both of them coming, when they reach there, he runs to her. He runs to the Suma, and Titu notices that Uma has come in a Maruti car. Both of them have come in a Maruti car. So it is probably his own car, Suresh's car. So he looks very angrily at Suresh's brother and asks him, "Where is my Fiat?" Maybe the Maruti was not his car, maybe it was given away and Suresh's brother had bought another car or something. So he looks angrily at Suresh's brother, the small boy, this 4-year-old, and asks him, "Where is my Fiat?" So actually, his family, what happened was his family had probably given away the Maruti car after Suresh's death, after his murder. So how did that little boy know about it? He had never met this person called Suresh in all of his life. He was just a 4-year-old child. So how did he know about it? So Suresh's uh, he met Suresh's parents, and he showed a lot of love towards those parents. Suresh's parents. And then when he went to Uma also, he asked about his children, like as though the kids were his own kids. He's just a 4-year-old, so he started to inquire to Uma, who is, he says, is his wife, and then he asks about his children also, his two children. So for everybody, it is rather astonishing. Here is this 4-year-old boy, a small boy, suddenly saying that he is Suresh Verma. He is the one who was murdered that night, and Uma is his wife. These two children are his. So it is really strange, a kind of rebirth story. Has he come back? Maybe to find who was the people who he was reborn, maybe to take his own revenge, the people who killed him that night. So this is how the story unfolds. So now we see, now for Tutu's family, it is very difficult to accept all these things. They just have a normal family with two kids, one elder brother called Ashok, this little child called Titu, and suddenly the child is talking strange things, saying that he is Suresh Verma, he has a big house in Agra, and then and he was murdered one night. And he has a wife there, he has children. So it's very difficult for Titu's family also to accept all of these things. So the things that happen also later are, they think all, probably these are all childish acts of their child. Maybe he has seen something which has affected his mind, maybe got influenced by all of that, and then he's just making up some story. So maybe he wants more attention. They couldn't understand what is actually happening. So all these things were now proving to also be true also. So what happens is that soon Titu's story, it becomes a topic of discussion in his hometown. Everybody starts talking about Titu's story. This how this child is suddenly talking about this place in Agra, a place that he has never been. So it's really strange. And then we see that uh, he wants to go there now. Now he insists that he wants to go there. So the whole news started spreading right through the state, the whole state of where they lived in and all that. And news about Titu, it starts spreading everywhere. And then we see that it's on newspapers, it's on the radio stations, everywhere. Each newspaper, local newspapers, all the radio stations are carrying this story about this strange child called Titu, who was talking about a previous life where he was Suresh Verma, a man who had a shop in there in Agra called Suresh Radio. He had a wife, he had two children, and loving parents, and how he was killed one night by these two people who came suddenly and shot him in the head. So, has this child returned? Probably is he reborn to maybe find out who are the people who murdered him? The possibility of that, it reaches the ears of a researcher called Antonia. So she is a researcher, this Antonia, and the whole news reaches her, and she wants to know more about this. So she finds out from the newspapers, from the radio station, and she starts researching on this thing. Then what happens further is that her name Antonia Mills. She was studying reincarnation at that moment. She was at the University of Delhi, and she was also the colleague. She also happened to be a colleague of a psychiatric professor called Dr. Ian Stevenson. So at that particular time, Dr. Stevenson was very famous for his research on reincarnation. He was in fact writing a book on it and giving a lot of talks on the subject. So find that he studied this case of Shanti Devi, Shanti Devi's rebirth in the 1920s in a lot of detail, and he wanted to find out different other cases around the country about the same kind of thing. So, on Dr. Stevenson's advice, this Antonia Mills, who's a researcher, she decided to study, in particular, Titu Singh's case. This child of 4-year-old who was talking about this of being previously this person who was murdered one night in Agra, a grown up man with a family with kids, and how he was murdered one night by two men. So, to study all of this child Situ's case, Antonia Mills goes to Agra. She goes to Agra with his family, and as soon as he entered Agra. As soon as he entered Agra, he finds that Titu says he starts remembering his whole past. He starts to remember the whole past. He says he knows exactly where his home is. He knows the shop's address also correctly. So how is this all happening? A 4-year-old suddenly knowing a place that he has never been to. He knows exactly where he lived, where the houses, the Suresh Verma's houses. He knows where the shop is. So he directly goes to Suresh's house. He stands in the courtyard there and he points to a tree. So he tells the people with him, Antonia Mills, who's the researcher there. He tells Uma also, who is the Suresh Verma's wife, that there are gold coins which have been buried under the tree. So he says that Suresh, in his previous life as Suresh Verma, who was a businessman, he had buried some gold coins under the tree. So this child is coming back now in the next life, telling his own wife that uh, there was some money that he had, some gold coins, and he had buried that against under this particular tree. So he had maybe some shady businesses. Many a times, maybe he had obtained money from all of that, and he had buried this money, this gold also, by deceit under that. So what happens is everybody, the whole family, they are stunned by the whole thing. They start digging over there under the tree, and then he realizes, Suresh's brother, they all realize, even Ashok, Titu's brother, they all realize that what Titu said was right. There is indeed a huge treasure of gold coins buried right under that tree. So finally, what happens is that they after seeing this, Suresh's family also accepts the fact that Titu is indeed their son, who is indeed the lost son who was murdered that night by two unknown people. But is this reincarnation thing theory? Is this how is it possible? How is it enough to prove that a rebirth has actually happened? So Antonia Mills, who was the researcher at that point of time, was also studying Tito's many things, his life and his uh, how his actions, everything he did right from the time he was small. What are the things he's been doing? So she started asking his parents what are the things he does, how anything similar to Suresh's nature also. And Suresh's family also tells Mills, Antonia Mills, that Titu's nature is also very similar to the Suresh Verma, the person who was killed that night. So he used to get angry once in a while. There would be some uh, fighting, bloodshed, and all. It was a very normal thing also for him. So he was, in fact, sometimes he would get angry about certain things. So it was part of his mental makeup too. So all of these things were happening also in Titu's behavior. Titu, a small 4-year-old child, he would get really angry sometimes. He would shout. He would uh, get into a rage. So one day Titu, his family, and Mills also, Antonia Mills, were passing by a market in Agra. So they bought bangles and some other things. And as soon as she was going to give him the money, Titu stopped them. So he started to threaten the bangle seller, saying that Antonia Mills is his guest and he cannot take money from her. So if he does that, he will shoot him. In fact, so of course the bangle seller is stunned by this, and he wonders what this child is talking about. Then Antonia Mills also mentions this incident in the research paper, and he says that in fact there was a similar behavior, similar incident with Suresh Verma also. So he strongly supports this theory of rebirth. So till now we see that in Titu Singh's case, which is a story of rebirth, it was going to take a different kind of uh, a turn, a different kind of twist it was going to take. So we see that one day Titu said something like said something that spread this whole case, that spread the whole case around it. It changed everything, and it became like kind of wildfire. it spread like wildfire in the media. So Titu said that a man who was always involved in the business with him was in fact responsible for the murder of Suresh that night. So he in fact names him. The small 4-year-old child this uh, names a person who was involved in a business with him in his previous birth, which was as Suresh Verma, who was murdered one night. So that's what he says. He is in fact responsible for the murder of Suresh Verma. So how can this be proved? Is there any way that this can be proved? So the media made this case so big that the murder case of Suresh was reopened. And for the first time, a 4-year-old boy, he was given the chance to testify to what had happened in his past life, how he was murdered in his past life. So the case was presented in the Nagra court, and in the court, to a 4-year-old boy, he repeated the whole incident, whatever happened that day, how in his past birth as Suresh Verma, he was shot on the right side of his head by these two men who approached him on a motorbike, and that is how he died. So after they started investigating Suresh Verma's post-mortem reports, all of those statements, it turned out to be very true. It was proved true. So after this, Antonia Mills' research papers, they were also present in the court, and in these papers there were reports also of Titu's birthmark. There was a birthmark which played a very important role in this case. So on the right side of Titu's head, there was, in fact, a circular kind of birthmark. So that was exactly the same place where Suresh Verma was also shot. So it turns out that in this lifetime, this place where he was shot, it had become like a birthmark for this 4-year-old child in his next birth. And then we see that apart from this, there was also a black spot on the upper part of Titu's head. And Suresh's family says that this mark was similar, in fact, to Suresh's birthmark. When he was alive, he had a birthmark like that. So this mark on Pitu was similar to what Suresh had, as he had the same birthmark when he was alive. So Dr. Ian Stevenson, in his research, says that talks about the connection between research and birthmarks. So he says that birthmarks are connected to the injuries of our past life. So in Tutu Singh's case, his birthmarks were connected to the injuries of Suresh's bullet wounds. So in Hinduism particularly, birthmarks are also given a lot of importance. It is said that while taking second birth, we take some signs of previous birth with us, which are seen as birthmarks on our body. So finally, on the basis of these evidences, the Agra court accepted this rebirth story, and how a previous person who was killed in a previous birth was reborn in this birth to take revenge on his killers. So how this is how Suresh's killers were punished. So this was a very revolutionary judgment, because the only proof was a child's memory of his past birth. So usually a court and law will not believe in such things. So the theory of this whole birth was being told as a lie, perhaps, and that's first they were saying it could be that the main reason was it could was that the reason was Titu's birth date. So Titu's birth date was 10th December 1983. So the government hospital, which that was what his family said. The government hospital had records there which state that his birth year was 1982. So according to official records, Suresh Verma was murdered on the night of 28th August 1983. So if these records were true, then the theory of rebirth could have been proved wrong. But then research talked about a theory that changed the course of the case once again, which is called replacement reincarnation. So, this is a condition, I repeat, replacement reincarnation. This is a condition in which the dead soul enters the body of a child and replaces the soul. So, uh, this can happen anytime. This can happen, but it can happen anytime between conception to birth. So, if you assume that Titu was born in 1982, then uh, how is this possible? Uh, how is it a true story then? Because Suresh's death was in 1983. So, the researcher James Matlock said that this case was a rare case in which Suresh's soul was in fact replace his soul a few months after the birth of the child. So there are uh, between 2 to 3 more birthmarks behind Titu's head, whose explanation Mills did not give in his report. So Matlock has in fact said that these marks were made when Suresh removed Titu's soul out of his body. And in Hinduism, the whole process is called Parkaya Pravesh, in where a spirit will replace a living soul and then take control of its body. So, as soon as the secrets related to Titu's birth date came out, then people started making their own theories. So, some people even said that Titu's family is making their son act to get money. So the whole thing was a thing by them, a plan by them to make money out of the child. But if this was the case, then how did Titu know about Suresh? How did he know about his family's every single private matter? How is that possible? And how did he find out, of course, about the attackers that only Suresh could have seen? He was only one who saw his attackers at night. So, how did this Titu, this 4-year-old child, know about it? So, many times before Titu Singh, cases of reincarnation have come up in India, but the theories of Agra's court judgment, the replacement reincarnation, the term that we heard here, made this case very special. So, was all of this uh, could be really true? Was 4-year-old boy really Suresh Verma, in his previous birth, a person who was killed, a businessman who had made a lot of money by some other methods, and he had buried this gold coins under the very tree that this 4-year-old boy says that he had buried in his previous life, Suresh Verma. So was it all a publicity stunt? And whatever it was, it was, of course, definitely interesting. So it is still studied. Titu Singh's case is still studied as a very unique reincarnation case. The truth of the story is still a very big secret. So, what are your thoughts on this? Do you really believe in it? So you can let us know in the comments, and don't forget to also like the video and also share it with your friends. So the this Hindi thing of it was done. This is a translation of the Hindi thing that was done by Raz RAAZ by Big Brain company. He was reborn to take his own revenge. So this is a translation of that very interesting story here for you. So, if you know about any other such families, do let us know. And for more such unseen, unheard stories, unseen stories, you can also subscribe to Raz, which is a great website that I would recommend to hear about such interesting things. I will try to bring in translations of some interesting stories too, not just from here but other sources also, uh, to further interest you and keep you coming back for more. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this.